We're going to be talking tonight about setting the standard and the idea that you have to become the standard in the life that you're living. You have to set the standard for those that you're around. And the truth is, what we're trying to do a little bit tonight is expose the standards you're actually living by. Like, you're letting someone else set the standard if you're not setting it in your life. If you're not the man in your life setting the standard for everyone in your circle of influence, then who is? Who is doing that for the people you're around? If you're not powerful enough, strong enough, confident enough to be the standard of influence, the standard of what it means to be a man, forget just even being a man, but being a human being. What does it mean to walk in the fullness of who you were meant to be? If you're not doing that, someone else is. So the goal tonight is to expose that, to say, who is it in your life that's doing that? Who is it maybe in your past that you're still living by their standard and you are setting a standard lower because of their influence, and you need to start raising the bar in your own life. So that sounds like it sucks, but we're going to get into it. And here's the question for tonight for check-in, okay? The check-in question sucks even worse. So here's the check-in question. If you had to watch someone you love live by the standard you're setting, would you consider them strong or weak? And why? If you had to watch someone you love, I know that's a difficult question, so I'm going to give you a second to ponder it. It's a complex question, obviously. So I'm going to give you just a little bit longer to answer, but please be mindful of the fact that we got 8 guys. I really do want to get through this question. If you had to watch somebody you love live by the standard you're setting, would you consider them strong or weak, and why? Yeah, I mean, the idea of like beauty for ashes is nice until your life looks like ashes. That's like, it's like everybody wants to oh, beauty for ashes. That's so awesome. God makes beauty for ashes. And then your life looks like ashes and you're like, screw this shit. Like, this is dumb. Like, I don't want this anymore. Well, no, that's how he makes beauty. And we're like, no, I want the other kind of beauty. I want the other kind. And like some of you have read scripture front to back. There is no other kind. There is no other kind. The real beauty that he's looking for. Anybody can find beauty when their life looks awesome. Here's the truth. You want to know how to define a psychopath? Someone who can't see goodness when it's standing in front of them and still blames everybody else. Like, the idea of your life being perfect and you still can't find any goodness in it is part of the thing that makes you psychotic and fractured and broken. Like, there's something mentally wrong with someone in that position. Like, the reality is that most people on planet Earth, when there's real beauty and it's easy and it's comfortable, it's easy to find beauty. Oh, that's so beautiful. I feel so great. I got everything I wanted. Isn't that awesome? No. You want to find real beauty. Your life looks like ashes. And I love that analogy because we all know how diamonds are made. From ashes, from charcoal, except for 2 things that we don't want: pressure and time. When you get pressure and time and you've got coal, you basically have dinosaur shit and pressure and time, and you've got really beautiful diamonds. So that's all you need to make all of your worst stuff beautiful and valuable, is pressure and time. That's all you need. And we want, dude, here's the truth. If we didn't need applause for our good effort, all of us would be badasses right now. You know what I'm saying? Like, we'd be living completely different if we didn't need applause 5 minutes in. If we genuinely were building for God, we're good. Like, everyone wants to say the same line. Everyone all through church, I've heard it for forever, right? Like, what? Just, bro, audience of 1, bro. Audience of 1, bro. Just an audience of 1. BS, because your life would look so different if you were building for an audience of 1, if you were praying for an audience of 1, worshiping for an audience of 1, all of the stuff, if you're serving for an audience of 1, our lives would look completely different, but we're not. We're not doing it for an audience of one. And sometimes we are doing it for an audience of one, but the audience of one is our wife and not God. So we're performing so that she receives us and not God. And that is an idol which God will tear down. If you want to know whether or not God's standing against your marriage, which by the way is biblical, literally it says this in Malachi. It says that the reason you weep at the altar and he does not hear you and does not give you what you are asking him for is because you lost faith in your marriage. It doesn't matter how much you're crying, how much you're weeping. It says you lost faith in the wife of your youth. You lost faith. That's not adultery. That's not adultery. That is, he says, you lost faith in the wife of your youth. And it's not adultery. It's I lost faith. It means if I can't have faith in a tangible relationship standing in front of me every day, how the hell am I supposed to have faith in a relationship I cannot see with an intangible, unreliable God that I can't literally engage with every day the way I can a physical human being in front of me? See, unfaithful is not adultery. Unfaithful, that's why God says, when you look at another woman with lust, you've already committed adultery in your heart. He's not talking about sexuality. Guys, this is what's so wild. We want to turn that into sexuality. Lust doesn't have to be sexual. Lust can be, I want that over there because it looks better and she would treat me better than my wife. The moment you think another woman would treat you better than your wife, you are now in lust, entering into the adultery Jesus was talking about. But the problem is we don't connect it with our prayer life. We don't connect that with our worship life. We just connect it with, oh, I've got to please my wife. No, now your audience of one shifted from God to your wife, and he cannot honor that because there will be no other gods except for him. That's the first commandment, guys. No other God, no other idol, no other image, no other person, no other relationship, none but him first. And the moment we're like, yeah, but fix my marriage. He's like, no, you already broke it. You're done. That's it. Nice try. Jake, what are the tools to fix my marriage? Go and fix you first. Yeah. But then how's that going to affect my marriage? Does that happen in 2 weeks or 3 hours? Or is that 3 months? Give me a timeline. There is no timeline. Time and pressure, it becomes a diamond. Yeah, but how long? Dude, David asked the same question, right? That's Psalm 40. How long, O Lord? How long? How long? You too sang it, right? It's how long? How long? How long to sing this song? How long to sing this? How long? And we don't know. And you guys have heard me say this before. If I could give you a timeline, every single man would show up to this thing and give me millions of dollars. But no man can give you a timeline for this. Bitching about it, the idea is, yeah, dude, I love that you just said that, Eric. Eric, that's great. That is great insight. Eric said in the chat, then the timeline would become your God. That's it. So you went from making your wife your God to making the timeline your God. So now I worship the 6 months it's going to take me to fix my marriage. Now that's God. So I worship that. Now I'm worshiping the tools. Oh my God, there's a book that'll fix it. Now I worship the tools. Oh my gosh, I can get this gift. Oh, now I worship the gift. Now I worship the gift. Now I worship the tool. Now I worship the timeline. Now I worship the resource. Now I worship guys, it's impossible to do this in that way. You cannot do it. And everybody wants to do it that way. And it's a bummer because they're missing out on the character development that takes place when we actually just focus on him, focus on our character, focus on the development. And that's why that last line is so powerful. I'm not doing this so that someone approves of me. I'm not doing this so that someone says I'm doing a good job. I have to become the standard in my life for those around me, my family, my community, my job, all of it. I have to become the standard. If not, guess what? Here's the best part. If I'm not the standard and somebody jacks me or somebody doesn't treat me the way I feel I deserve, I can now blame them because I made them the standard and not me. There is so many people leaving church right now because their pastor didn't do it right, or their pastor didn't like them enough, or their pastor fill in the blank. And there's all these people with church hurt because church was their God. Guys, church is not God. The community is not God. God is God. Your wife is not God. Marriage is not God. Your kids are not God. Your job is not God. Your finances are not God. But it is impossible for us because we are creatures of worship who want to worship the thing that gives us the most comfort immediately. That is what we worship every time. What gives me the most comfort in the most immediate way? That is my new God. I worship it. Then it becomes an addiction. Then it becomes a cycle. And then my character is fractured and I'm in the same broken patterns I've lived my whole life in. Or you can choose to become the standard. You can stop bitching about how nobody is the standard and nobody is doing it right and your wife isn't doing it correctly and your family doesn't get it and nobody understands how hard it is for you. You can just take all of that and leverage it into momentum to become someone that you never thought you could become. That is really possible, guys. That's what's insane. I think some people are thinking that's just impossible. No, it just takes time and pressure. It just takes time and pressure, which does, to Dustin's quote, that sucks. Like, that does suck. I agree with Dustin. It's not like every day I'm in the middle of this and I'm like, God, this is so fun. Like, wow. But you guys have heard me say this, and I know it's slightly inappropriate, but to live in a constant state of orgasm would just get rid of all sorts of pleasure in general. You can't live in a constant state of comfort. You can't live in a constant state of pleasure. In order for pleasure to be pleasure and for miracles to be miracles, you have to know what pain and suffering and sacrifice looks like. So that when comfort, so that when ease, so that when peace, so that when pleasure shows up, you're like, that's different. That's different. I haven't had this before. I haven't had that before. I want that. And the problem is that we build idols to that. You know, there's this passage in I love this. There's this passage in the Old Testament where it's a weird, obscure passage, and it says that the devil wanted Moses' body. Do you guys remember this? Before they crossed the Jordan, the devil wanted Moses' body. Isn't that a weird passage? But why? And some of you have heard me say this, and this is like more of a preacher's point. But the reason that the devil wanted Moses' body was because if the devil could get Moses' body and give it back to the people of Israel, they would build a monument and a moment instead of building momentum to cross the Jordan and become who they were meant to become. See, we want these moments to become monuments so that we never have to go anywhere, and we'll just build a denomination around it. No, screw that. That's why the fight Monday nights should never feel comfortable to you. Like, doing this work is never like, oh, shit, I get it now. This feels so good. You guys, every week I'm reading books and I'm hearing stuff and I'm like, damn, I have a long way to go. We should feel like that constantly because we're looking at the Jordan ahead of us and we have to go in at flood stage and we have to cross that thing if we're going to get into the promise. We cannot stay in comfort. We cannot build a monument. We have to keep building momentum and moving forward. That's why you guys have heard me talk about the hero's journey, not as a cycle, but a growth spiral, that it continues higher and wider and deeper and stronger. We keep moving forward because we keep growing and we keep developing. And I know that sucks. I'm not confused about it, but I do recognize that if we don't know who our standard is and we don't take up the challenge of becoming that standard, then we will continually build idols and allow others to become the standard in our life that we're living up to and wonder why we have compromised. That's like the Romans 12 things, right? Do not conform any longer to the patterns of the world, but therefore be transformed by what? It's not by the renewing of your actions, right, guys? We've talked about this. You know this if you've ever done the Pathway to Purpose and done those first 7 days of the initiation course, right? Like the renewing of our mind, because our beliefs determine our behaviors. So if I believe someone is better than me, I will make them the standard and I will think myself less and I will lose my self-confidence. I will lose my courage and I will set them as the standard instead of me as the standard to become who I was meant to become. Now, when I say standard, let me make it very clear because God, if I said this in front of a church, I get crucified and everybody wants to tell me I'm freaking making myself the center of the universe. And you clearly, I've said enough Bible verses tonight alone that we should all understand that I'm talking about ultimately Christ is the model of masculinity that we're looking towards. But on earth, in our natural circumstances, in the relationships we're in, where is the standard we're setting? Because this is what I want you to answer right now. And I want you to put this down. Who has been the model of masculinity? Who has been the standard of masculinity in your life? Thus far, who has been the standard of masculinity in your life? You need to answer that question. And some of you haven't even asked yourself that question. You don't even want to look at it. But the truth is, I can promise you this. If you wrote down a name, I can trace that back to stories that will ultimately reveal the behaviors you're living in currently. Now, I'm not saying it's right or wrong or whatever. All I'm trying to do is, again, guys, all I told you from the very beginning of tonight is I said we're trying to expose the standard so we can change the standard. That's the entire goal. This is not a hopeless thing. This is, if we're not going to give our attention to it, how can I change it? If we're not going to be honest with it, how can I transform it? And I love this quote. This is a Jocko quote. You know, Jocko, if you haven't read his book, Extreme Ownership, you can check that book out. It doesn't make many of my lists, but it's a good one, needless to say. And here's one of my favorite quotes where he says, "There are no bad teams, only bad leaders, because the standard always starts with you." I want you to hear that again. There are no bad teams, only bad leaders, because the standard starts with you. Well, that's great if we leave it at sports, but the exact same thing is true about your home. If the team dynamic of your home, if the reality of your home is off, it's because somewhere in your life you're off. And do you understand? Like, this is what's so hard about it, because we have to hear that and not turn to shame and guilt. We have to hear that and go, I've got work to do. Where is that true? Where am I not setting the standard? And why is the team dynamic of my house off? Why is it off right now? And then stop looking at our wives, stop looking at our kids, stop looking at our jobs, stop looking at whatever. No, look in the mirror. You don't have control over anybody else. I don't have control over anyone else. You guys, you know my story. When my wife ripped me to shreds, sitting in front of a pastor, just annihilated me. Was like, you are the worst husband on earth. You're awful. I mean, I just led in front of 17,000 people at Allstate Arena. People would have thought I was a hero. I could have been like, forget you. You're wrong. Don't you know? I just led worship. Don't you know? I'm signed to Jesus Culture. Don't you know? I'm traveling the nations. Don't you know? I do this stuff. Don't you know who I am? I am Jake Hamilton. And the truth was, I had to look in the mirror, and that changed everything. That changed everything, guys. That is what we're responsible for. Not pointing a finger, but looking in the mirror. If you tolerate laziness, you will become lazy. If you allow weakness, you will become weak. If you accept excuses, you will become a man who makes them. The standard you walk past is the standard you accept. That was the quote from today's email that was on there. The standard you walk past is the standard you accept. If you're allowing yourself to get away with it and others to get away with it, then that is how low the bar is around you. So let me give you your 3 pieces of work that we're going to do from tonight. I'm just going to give you these real quick. We'll do the blessing because we're at time and I want to respect everybody's time. So let me just jump over the couple pieces and I'm just going to give this to you. Here's the 3 practical steps to becoming the standard. Number 1, you need to define your non-negotiables. That's what I want you to do. Define your non-negotiables. What are your absolutes? What will you never tolerate in yourself? You have to answer those. What are the non-negotiables in your life? I will never, and then fill in the blank. And again, you need grace. We need mercy. We said that at the beginning. There are things we just need that are non-negotiables, and we're going to go after them relentlessly. Not with shame and guilt, but with real conviction, real courage, so that we can develop character. What are your non-negotiables? And you need to write them down. Keep them somewhere visible this week. Okay, write them down. Keep them somewhere visible. What are your non-negotiables? And please don't be dramatic. Okay, let me say this. Sorry, I need to say this too. Don't be dramatic, okay? Like we do this every week, and it's like everyone's like, I'm going to start working out 7 days a week, 2 hours a day. It's going to be the best thing ever, and I'm going to be super healthy, and I'm going to stop eating. I'm going to stop and I'm going to work out 2 hours and I'm never eating again. Never carbs, never sugar, never. It's like, just Again, I said this last week, just start with some sit-ups. Okay, just start somewhere. Okay, don't be like, and my non-negotiables are these 20 things. But what are they? Like, what are your non-negotiables that you want to fight for? Okay. Number 2, stop accepting weakness. I want to just say it a different way as well. What excuses are you currently making and you need to get rid of? What excuses are you continually telling yourself and they need to be killed? No more excuses. Well, I mean, I would love to get up an hour earlier, but she's actually, to work out because I know I need to do that. But if I didn't, I'd be tired because I stay up too late. Well, okay, that's an excuse. You could go to bed earlier. That would be harder, but you could. Okay, so you get to make the choice. Okay, what excuses are you making this week? We're killing them. Okay, we're going to kill excuses this week. No more excuses. All right, number 3, lead by example, which is a generic one, but I want you to hear it anyway. Your family, your friends, and your community take cues from you. So what is the example you want to set? So here's what I want you to write down: a vision for the example you want to be for the people around you. What is the vision for the example you want to be for those around you? So non-negotiables, no more excuses, and what is the vision you have for being the example, for setting the standard that you want to set in your home, your relationships, your community? Okay? So let's do those 3. We'll jump in. Make sure if you have any questions, bring them to the man cave. We could talk about them there. I love being able to do that. A couple of people have hit me up in the DMs. That's fine. You can hit me up in the DMs. If you don't want to share, that's great. But I really encourage you, some of the vulnerability that's happening in sort of the DMs, let's try to make that into the man cave, because it is so helpful for others to see those questions, to hear those thoughts, and to be able to engage with it, because some people are feeling the same thing and they may not think that they're able to share. And when you show the courage to do that, it transforms everything. So it's really, really helpful in the man cave, in the general community.